Welcome to the Lightforge podcast. This is ADWCTA.
This is Merps. Hello. Let's talk mini set. That's what we're talking about today. We know the details.
So much
from
news on the mini
set,
sets.
except all the cards. That we don't have all the information for.
We're close.
We know the mini set. We're close, but we're not there yet. So today's a little bit awkward because typically at this time we would be rating all of the cards, but we don't have all of the cards, to my knowledge.
We definitely don't have all the cards because the other 9 are going to be revealed tomorrow on Monday, and the set is going to come out. Full patch notes are going to be available on Tuesday, and the full set's going to come out on Wednesday. So I don't know when we're going to find out what the rotation is. I assume there's going to be a rotation. I don't know if that's even been confirmed yet or not.
We don't have any definitive answer as of this point, I believe. I think we should expect a rotation, but no, it's not like anybody in Blizzard has stated, here are the sets that are rotating, or here are the sets that are not rotating.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure they didn't even confirm 100% at least that there is a rotation happening right now. So I don't really know what's going to happen. But remember last week we were talking about maybe they do another balancing update? Well, they're obviously not going to do a balancing update now because they're releasing a whole bunch of new cards. So even if there is no rotation, it's going to be a slightly adjusted meta. And if there is going to be a rotation, it's going to be a huge difference. Either way, there's a bonus stream happening on Wednesday. I don't know if Merp says time on Wednesday, but I'm going to at least be playing the arena, checking out. That's it's all like very. I don't know when was this announced. This was announced Friday. So this is all very recent news. We're being hit by it kind of hard and fast. We'll know. One thing we will do is that we will release our normal pre-release kind of like tier list thing, the ratings for the cards before the cards actually hit, go live. But we won't do another Lightforge going over all the cards or anything. Like, this is it. And so, if a crazy Hunter card comes out, you'll just hear us bitch about it next week rather than having a special time. But if you follow our Twitter, the ADWCTA Twitter, and I'm sure Merps will retweet it as well, I will be tweeting out our final tier list results before they launch. It will also be on the same link that you guys use for all the previous ones that we released. So we're just going to add another tab to it once all the cards are out. And it will, assuming they don't tell us the rotation, it won't really take into account the rotation. They'll just kind of be the general power levels of the cards. But you'll hear some of them today. You'll hear the ones that matter today that are not Demon Hunter, Hunter, and Mage. Because those are the cards we don't know. We know all the other cards, just not Demon Hunter, Hunter, and Mage.
We'll talk about the ones that we think are impactful or good. I'll even talk about one that we rated not as good, but I think got a lot of discussion, especially in our Discord as well. I think people are very interested in it. I thought about it back and forth a lot. So here's the thing. This is one in which ADWCTA and I actually didn't really talk about. This is one in which he did the scores. I looked at it for maybe just 15-20 minutes beforehand. I thought they looked okay. I'll take a good look at them before we send them out, finalize them. This way you guys can do what you guys love to do best, which is overanalyze it and then laugh at us for getting everything wrong. I look forward to that.
Yeah, I mean, don't take these as the final scores that we're talking about today because we have very little time to do them. They will be final before the expansion launches. It will be tweeted out. It will be available online on the Google spreadsheet. That will be our last word on the pre-release scores.
Yes. So if you were hoping for an extensively long Lightforge in which we talk about everything, that won't be happening. It's just it's kind of useless to go through everything when you don't have the complete picture. Also, we just never go as hard during the mini sets. So yeah, mini set is going to be coming out this week. We are very excited. I think any sort of shift in the meta is very welcome, but we're just going to be talking about a few cards today.
Okay, so let's start with the neutrals. We always start with the neutrals, and we're going to talk about every single neutral card because they're all important because, well, one, they're all pretty good, actually, but also they're neutral cards. The first one is Bubbler. Bubbler is a 1 mana 2/4 elemental. It's a neutral common. And it says, after this minion takes exactly 1 damage, destroy it. So it alternatingly is a 1 mana 2/1 or a 1 mana 2/4, depending on if it ever takes exactly 1 damage.
Yeah, and yes, there is a little bit of in between there, but like not that much in between. You could be saying like, oh, it's like a 2/3 because what if it takes 2 damage and then 1 damage and then the extra? Yeah, sure. Um, Bubbler is just an interesting card. This is one that we actually talked about right before this. And the way I view Bubbler is like it's so meta dependent, right? If you look at one of the metas that we just previously had, which was very Demon Hunter and Druid dominated, and especially there was a period of time in which it was Demon Hunter, right? Like we had a period of time in which it was Druid at number 1, but we also had a period of time in which it was Demon Hunter at number 1. That is not a good meta for Bubbler. And with how Blizzard balances and operates, it's tough. This one is going to be very, very meta dependent. So you just really have to see. Like it's hard for me to like sit here and be like, oh yeah, confidently this is what you'll see out of Bubbler, because it depends on what classes Blizzard puts at the very top. But it can get some value. It could just be a complete dud, as in 1 mana 2/1 without any extra abilities, which, as we know,
but on
is
average, it's going to be good. Like, on average, it's going to be good. Because you know what? There's still only 4 classes that pings. 3 of those classes take 2 mana to ping. Your 1 mana 2/1 is not good, but you're still forcing a ping. And you're forcing a ping at basically the next turn, or at least before your opponent does anything. Because your opponent can't just, like, coin out a 3-drop or something, right? Like, that doesn't work. Then you're just dealing with a 2/4 now. You've just kind of you've just turned Bubbler into a 1 mana 2/4 if you coin out a 3/4 or a 2/4 or like a 2/3 or something. You really limit your opponent's options, even if they are a mage, right, or a druid or a rogue, and you're like, oh, you could just kill this thing. You've still limited their options. Like it's good even against those classes. Like it's not just a 2/1 even against those classes. It's only a 2/1 if they actually deal the 1 damage before this gets some kind of value by hitting something. So yeah, it's I like this card. We currently have it at a C+, and C+ is quite good. Like Yeti is at the bottom of C or at the top of D+. Like that's where like a Yeti is. A Croc is between a D and a D+. So this is
good thing about this card is that, okay, so for example, there's cards with a decent amount of upside, but if X condition is met, huge downside, right? The problem with those cards is that you don't want those to be big.
yes.
The bigger they are, the worse those cards are. So this sort of effect, the bubbler effect, or any sort of effect in which it's like, hey, this is more powerful for a decent amount of times, but if X condition is met, this is a trash card. You want that card to be as small as possible. And so what you were supposed to get from a 1 mana card was not that much, and then what you are getting is many times on top of that. Meanwhile, if you do something like this with like a 5, 6, 7 mana card, typically what you get isn't like a 12 mana card effect. You're getting like a 8, 9 mana card effect. And then if like X condition is met, like that bumps it down to like a 2, 3 mana card. It's something like that. That's typically the design that they'll use, understandably so. But here, the percentage gained versus your total loss is more in your favor because you never expected as much from a 1 mana card, and it shouldn't be as punishing when you quote low roll or lose to it as it would be than if you put a similar gamble, like, I'm screwed if you have it effect on a 6 or 7 mana card.
Yep. And these are gambles that, like, as a good player, you don't really want to take, but given that drafts are what they are, you only get 3 options, you sometimes have to take. Overall, and if you're wondering, like, in the span of, like, in the scale of 1 drops, what's a C+, right? It's about where a 1/3 neutral not doing anything is. Like, it's a little tiny, not significant amount better than that. is what we rated overall. And in the meta, you'll see whether this is good or not by how high Demon Hunter is, right? If Demon Hunter is a top class, this is probably a tiny bit worse than a 1-3. If Demon Hunter is like a not so good class, this is probably better than a 1-3. But it's a 1-drop. It's a 1-drop that you will take into your deck, and you will not be unhappy with it. So it's a good neutral addition, I think.
I like it. It's one of those that like is definitely going to be annoying. The thing that I hate is introducing any sort of variance on turn 1.
It's not that much variance though. Like a 1 mana, like we're in the era where a 1 mana 2/4 as just a card would not be like game breaking.
No, I get it, but I'm okay. Look, I'm more so okay with like, okay, did you draft / did you draw your 2/1 Worgen Infiltrator versus a 2/2, right? Like Battle Mage, for example. I'm more okay with that. I'm less okay with something like this, just like I was less okay with Gadget's and Jouster when it was in the meta, in which it was not a good card, but I was like, come on, I don't need this on turn 1, right? Because the Jouster between a 1/2 and a 2/3 was astronomical. So I'm not saying that this is like a problem card or anything. I just don't like this much swing on turn 1 by you dropping it and having the conditions of the class / what is in their hand really determine a huge swing.
This is kind of like now that you bring up Jouster, it's kind of like a Jouster. It's like a Jouster where instead of RNG, it's determined by what's actually happening in the game. It's like a better designed Jouster, right? Like a better period Jouster and also a better designed Jouster at the same time.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So moving on, the next neutral card is a rare card. It is a 3 mana 3/3 beast. It is a Snapdragon. Snapdragon being a beast and not a dragon. It has a battle cry that says give all battle cry minions in your deck +1/+1. So 1, this is all battle cry minions in your deck. So these are not in your hand. They are in your deck only. Means you have to then draw them. And it is for the rest of the game, but in order to get there, you have to play a 3 mana 3/3 first.
Yeah, look, we rated this like a C.
It's probably a really low C. I don't know. I have to redo. I'm gonna redo it and see if it's actually a D+.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was like, if you want to say it's like a D+, that's fine.
I think in my like C is kind of a decent sized range, but I think in my math I included the hand. Now that I'm thinking back to how I did it, like
I was fine for it being because like you do make up for it, like with the amount of battle cry stuff in the game right now. You do make up for it. Now, do you care that you're playing a 3 mana 3/3? It's not great, so it's definitely not a good card. Remember, a C means it is one of the, like, not worst, but like it's not a good card.
It's a below average card.
It's a below average card in your deck, so that's what it would be. And I think most people are like when they hear that assessment.
But a C is like you would take this over a Yeti, and like assuming that you don't have blatant curve problems at that point in your draft. And I don't think that's true. I think I take a Yeti over this.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, so it's probably a D+. Is just kind of what I'm saying. Maybe it's still a C. I don't know. Maybe we're a little too harsh on it, and the persistent effect of a lot more stats later on over the course of the game matters more.
It is a good amount.
But, yeah, you have a lot of battlecry cards. Yeah, all right. But anyway, this is kind of a less interesting card, I think, but not a problematic card by any stretch of the imagination. Finally, the third non-legendary neutral cards. There's only 3 cards, by the way, in neutral that are being added. There's 5 cards, but the other 2 are legendaries, and we're going to talk about them after this. So this one is the most interesting card. It is a rare, so you're going to see it about as often as Mothership. It's a 4 mana 5/4 beast. Battle Cry. Look at 3 cards in your opponent's hand and choose one. It can't be played the next turn. So not only do you see 3 cards in your opponent's hand, which is like almost all the cards in your opponent's hand usually, but you get to pick one and block it from being played the next turn. And it's otherwise like a normal 4-drop.
That's a pretty powerful effect. Just the scouting potential is huge. Like, there's a lot of big cards now in which you're unsure whether or not they have it, and you kind of your playstyle differs like vastly if you know that they have that card. So just that is very helpful. But then let's say you get that information, and then you also going into, let's say, turn 5, you see a 5 drop there,
Mm-hmm.
you block that. Wow. That is great because you have done two things. You have potentially blocked their turn such that they have to play something else, and you really took that 5 drop out of the game. I'm not saying they can't use it again, but what, on turn 6 are they playing that 5 drop? If they do, well, that's like not as much tempo as they should have gotten. Are they going to play that later on? Well, that's a card that's been sitting in their hand for like maybe 4 or 5 turns then, so you've
Yeah.
really lessened its value. Really powerful effect.
Mm-hmm. Yep. You can use it to as kind of insurance policy before you drop a big thing, or as you're about to overextend onto the board. But yeah, blocking the next drop, whether it's a 4 or a 5, that's going to be the main use for this. Also, end of game situations where you just get to see what the 2 cards they're holding are, and then you know your entire game plan. Like, it's actually super powerful. It's just that it's soft power. So a normal 5/4 would be a D plus, and this is a B. So this ability, even though it doesn't like do anything specifically, it's getting a lot of value because it is just that freaking good. All right, cool. So let's move on to the legendaries. So there are 2 neutral legendaries that are coming with this set. And people have problems with both of them. I'm just going to put it out there right now. They're both Colossus. No one likes them. Matt London has like almost preemptively lowered the offering rate of at least one of them, if not both of them. At least on Twitter, he's like, "Yeah, we're this is probably going to happen." So just prepping you for it. Let's talk about the first one. The first one is and I'll just tell you the rating of them both. Both of these are rated S. One of them is rated like a mid S, one of them is rated like an almost S plus, but they're not actually S pluses, and they're certainly not the like super X plus 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 ones that the class Colossus ones are. For comparison, Onyxia was a legit S plus by our tier list ratings, and then a bunch of the other really powerful legendary neutral cards were rated S. So this is not without precedent. I don't want people to like look at this and be like, oh my god, like there's so many people out there right now. They're like, oh my god, it's another raid boss Onyxia. Close, but not quite. It's more like, oh my god, it's another Ivys or Ysera, which is not that much better than for the game than a raid boss Onyxia, but just not the exact same power level. So the first one, this is the mid S tier rating one, is a Azumat, 8 mana 6/5 beast. Colossal +6. That means it adds up to 6 1/3 minions onto the board. It has a death rattle that says, for each of Azumat's tentacles, destroy a random enemy minion. So there's all these 1/3s that's going to come on in addition to your 6/5. And at whatever point your 6/5 dies, it starts clearing random stuff off your opponent's board for each 1/3 that's still living. You can either clear all the 1/3s or make sure you have nothing really of any value on your side of the board when you clear the 6/5. And regardless, they still have a crap ton of stats, even though most of it is in the form of 1/3s, which are not super valuable at that stage in the game, but still, stats are stats.
Yeah, with these cards, I mean, you got to be used to colossal minions by now. I think you just had to expect them to print more. It kind of sucks that these are neutrals, but they are not power creeping on colossal minions.
Mhm.
These are 4 colossal minions. Fair, or they're fine. They're not fine when you compare it to the cards that you probably want to see in the meta, but otherwise, yeah, both of these cards are fine.
Yeah. So that was Azumat, the less problematic of the 2 cards. Now the more problematic of the 2 cards is Neptulon the Tidehunter. And this is one that people have a real problem with and are like, is this better or worse than a raid boss Onyxia? It's worse. This is 10 mana 7/7 elemental, colossal +2. The 2 things that they're adding are 4 twos, and they are called hands. And those 4 twos have this text that says they are immune while attacking. They don't have rush by themselves. But Neptulon the Tidehunter has rush and Wind Fury, and the ability that says whenever Neptulon attacks, if you control any hands, they attack instead. So you get 2 attacks from each of the hands, and you get 2 targets altogether. So you're trying to deal 8 damage to 2 separate targets. And then your opponent better be able to deal 2 damage twice, or it better be able to kill off the 7/7, or else you're going to get more pain coming in.
Yeah. So, look, you obviously get less attack than Raid Boss Onyxia. You get a lot less flexibility, right? A lot less attack, a lot less flexibility, but it's still really, really powerful. It'll still swing the game. And we really shouldn't be using Raid Boss Onyxia as any sort of benchmark for anything. It's like you as an actor, you know, you'll be like, ah, damn, I did worse than Daniel Day-Lewis.
Just a little worse.
Yeah. Another day of me not being Daniel Day-Lewis.
Another day of being nominated and losing out to Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah, so we can't really do that. It's still good, and it's gonna be really annoying. It's gonna be really annoying, and it's gonna end games. Another card that we, I think, as a community, just don't love to see.
Like, the point of S tier card is that none of them should ever exist. Like, I don't care, at least not in neutral. Even in classes, they probably shouldn't exist. But in neutrals, no S cards should exist. That's always been, without, like, an asterisk, our position. That's why we drew the line at S. Because at S, it's just game winning. Like, what happens the rest of the game almost doesn't matter. The only time what happens the rest of the game matters is if you don't get to play this card. Because you're already dead. Like, that's why Ysera has some problems, right? That's why Raid Boss Onyxia has an S+, and not like a XXS+. It's because, well, you know, you need to get to turn 10 in order for these cards to really do their thing. And you lose a bunch of games before turn 10, or you win a bunch of games before turn 10. So, here, it's kind of the same, right? It's another 10 mana card. It's another card that, when it gets played, I don't care if it's a tiny bit less powerful than Raid Boss Onyxia, you're going to win the game if you play the card. Your opponent's going to win the game if they play the card. But they have to get to turn 10. That's a thing. And if you're wondering why this card is a little worse than Raid Boss Onyxia, and you're like, how does the math work out? I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but if you just kind of look at the amount of damage that is being done, Raid Boss Onyxia can target any amount of targets when it comes out, and it deals about the same amount of damage. Neptulon can only target 2 things. That's actually a very big deal. And then for Raid Boss Onyxia to get wiped off the board, basically, it requires about the same amount to make it like not be ridiculous. So it's kind of like, yes, if any of these things survive a turn, you're dead anyway. It kind of doesn't matter which one is more powerful, if this one has Wind Fury or like whatever. The big part is the initial impact. There are boards, quite a lot of boards actually, where Neptulon is not going to end the game. You're going to play the Neptulon, you're going to clear 2 things, and your opponent has 3 things, and then they kill you. Whereas Raid Boss Onyxia would have cleared all 3 things. And then you would have been alive and win the game after that. Like, that is a huge part of a 10 mana card that effectively wins the game when you play it. It's how frequently will it actually win the game. And Neptulon just doesn't win the game as often as Raid Boss Onyxia. Alright. Those are the neutral cards. We're not going to talk about every class card. There's a lot of class cards. There's very few of them that are total crap. They're almost all like at least D tier or D plus tier even, and therefore draftable. But we are going to talk about everything that is B tier or above. We drew the line at B because B is generally the bottom of B is and the top of C plus is kind of where your average card is in the deck. So, or sorry, your median card is in the deck. So these are all cards that are going to be better than your average pick. Just because, I don't know, there's no real point in talking about some of the worst cards, and we didn't really want this podcast to go on for 2 hours. But you'll
Very
be able
fair.
to see all the ratings when we put them on our spreadsheet before the set comes out. So let's go with how do you want to do this? Let's go with the most ridiculous one first. I just want to get this over with because we're coming off of Neptulon, which is a ridiculous card. Let's talk about the other totally ridiculous card that is released, and there's 3 cards that are released for each of these classes. Shaman's no exception. 2 of them are below B. One of them is S tier. So we're going to talk about the S tier card. It is a rare card. It is called Command of Neptulon. 5 mana nature spell. Remember, 5 mana. 5. Overloads 1. So you can think of it maybe as 6 mana, but it comes out on turn 5 potentially. Summon 2 5/4 elementals with Rush.
They even have a tag to them. They're elementals, for synergies and everything.
That is 10 damage of initiative, at least some of which is probably going to stay alive. 5 mana. Overload 1.
So we have a power crept, unnerfed Faceless Corruptor. If you guys remember, Faceless Corruptor, the current version is a 4/4. It was at first a 5/4, and you had to like
Have a thing on the
turn
board.
a minion.
And
right?
the minion disappears. It's not
The
like
minion
you just had to have another minion. You had to have another minion, which is hard enough. And then you lose that minion. So it can't even be a good minion.
Yep. So that's where we're at right now. We have Power Crept, one of the cards that had to get nerfed and everybody complained about. And now Shamans have an upgraded version of this. This is like the definition of an S tier card. Like, it is supremely powerful. You kind of always want it. If you're ahead, this is fantastic. If you're behind, this is fantastic. You get way too much. You don't have to meet any conditions to use it. Boo-hoo, you overload 1. I think people are very happy paying 6 mana for this and then getting it out 1 turn early on turn 5. So I think with this card, it's interesting. So let's bring another card in that we initially rated high, but we actually don't kind of have to talk about because they actually banned it. And that card is Inkveil Ambusher.
Okay, so we're moving on from this to Inkveil Ambusher.
Well, I want to bring that in because I want to talk about this, right? Because I want to talk about them together.
So let's bring in Rogue then. So Rogue has 2 cards that we rated A tier, not S tier, A tier. So A tier cards are generally okay to have for classes, and this is one of them, Inkveil Ambusher.
Yeah, so Inkveil Ambusher is a 2-drop. It is a Naga also. I forgot I had a tag. 2 mana 1/2 stealth Naga. And its ability has +3 attack and immune while attacking. Wow. Blizzard sure loves this. Now, if you're out there thinking, wait, this is an insane card, we agree with you. And I think mostly everybody would agree with you. If this were to exist, we would have given it what? What was the rating?
The rating is an A.
Oh, okay.
Like
no. Yeah.
The rating is not like an S tier or whatever card, for the reason that it does not win you the game. And
no, it doesn't.
Like, I mean, it can win you the game.
It could win you the game.
But like, let's say you play it, even the best of circumstances, on turn 2, you play it, you haven't won the game.
Yeah, you can overcome it.
You're very far away from having won the game for playing this card.
Now, the problem is this sort of swing and this sort of like, do you have it question to your opponent from turn 2 feels real bad. It's really bad. So what happened today was Zeddy tweeted to Matt London, who once again is the head of the modes team, and asked Matt, hey, can we ban this? And Matt actually said, yeah, this has already been banned. And the interesting information is that he told Zeddy that it wasn't even his decision. It was either banned by Chalky or Gallon before it ever made it to him. He was like, it was banned before I ever even found out what the card did. So props to either Gallon or Chalky. Congratulations. And I think, first of all, this is incredibly important because this is the very first time we've had a class card preemptively banned from the arena, right? Like, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but preemptively, guys, because I know some of you guys are like, oh, there's a... No. Preemptively banned class card. And it just shows that whatever barrier was there, if any, that's been broken. And they are happy to break that. And they don't want to just wait. I completely agree with it. And as we said, this is a card in which they didn't have to see it to realize how not just powerful it was, but how frustrating, how toxic it could have been. And now let's bring it back to...
like, that's the focus on it. Like, talk about Inkville Ambusher. I want to talk about it for 1 second, in that the rating is an A. It is not an S. This card is less good than at least 20 other cards in this meta that we're currently in, that most of which no one's even thinking about banning. This card does not have that worry. This is like a Flappy Bird thing. I mean, this is more powerful than Flappy Bird, but it's that same idea where it is just extremely unfun to play with this card or away from this card, and this card can single-handedly win you the game on turn 2 quite often. Even though, if you look at how it affects win rates by putting it into a deck, it is going to fall behind so many other class cards. And if they had like internal data, or if they waited to release it and saw the actual like data when it came out, they'll have that same conclusion, but they banned it preemptively because of the way this card was designed. It was designed in a way that is extremely unhealthy and unfun for Arena. And so it got banned preemptively. This is not a ban based purely on power level.
Yes. And if you want to talk about, okay, do we want something like Command of Neptulon preemptively banned?
Yeah,
I mean, I would not mind that at all. But it's like, between these two cards, the Ambusher, the Rogue 2-drop, or Command of Neptulon, for them to first ban Ambusher, is that correct? Or like, can I understand that decision making? I definitely can.
I would rather Ambusher. Like, if there was two of them and you're like, you can only have one of these banned in the arena, I would ban Ambusher, not Command of Neptulon. Even though they're both rare and one is better than the other. I would ban the less bad card. I mean, the less good card, because it will just make so many games more frustrating.
Yes, you want to give players a few more turns to at least prepare, to at least... And look, they're still going to get mad. It's just like, people get really mad, and by people I mean some streamers get really mad when something like Scales of Onyxia is played, and I understand, right? But, it's still like, all right, so it's turn 7, you've had some time, and I understand that's not enough for some people, but you do get maybe some fleeting moments of happiness and decision-making before that thing comes down. When Ambusher comes down on turn 2, you scan your hand, and you're just screwed by it. Wow, it just feels like the game is over. Whether or not it is. It could very well be, because it is such a highly rated card. But whether it is or isn't, it's very tempting for you to feel incredibly bad.
Like, Rate of Onyxia especially, like, it's a A-rated card.
Scales of
Onyxia. It's a A-rated card. Like, it is not actually that super ridiculously, insanely good. It just happened to be in the best class, and it was a common, and people got really annoyed at it. Like, there are ridiculous board clears. That's one of the better ridiculous board clears. But that's all it is. Like, you should not be... Like, if you find yourself getting more mad at Raid of Onyxia and less mad at, say, like, Caverns...
Scales.
No, Caverns.
No, Scales of Onyxia.
Right. Caverns in Shaman.
No, you said Raid of Onyxia.
Fine.
We have to correct you on that.
Fine. If you find yourself getting more mad at Scales of Onyxia than at Caverns from Shaman, then you need to readjust your feelings because you're wrong. Not in terms of which is more powerful, but in terms of which you should be more frustrated at, even. Like, you're not going to have a good time if you get more frustrated by whatever of Onyxia than by a totally game-winning card. To this day, I've still yet to win a game where my opponent's Caverns on 4, and I did not Caverns on 4. It's been around for a while. I see it, I mean, Shaman's not the best class either, but I've still never won when that's happened. And, I don't lose immediately. I don't lose in the next 3 or 4 turns. I just always lose because it's too much to overcome. And Caverns was that an S tier card? Was it an S plus tier card? It was a really highly rated card either way, but that's the problem with a card like Caverns. It was an S tier card. It wasn't even an S plus. So here's another one, right? Command of Neptulon. Here's another S tier card in Shaman. At least this one's rare, so you won't see it as often. But this is why I really don't like S tier cards. Like, it doesn't matter if it's designed in, like, Caverns is probably the least the least frustrating way to design an S tier card that does not purely involve like card draw, right? And still, it's just too overpowered. It's just too overpowered. Like, that's what happens when you get into the S tier. Command of Neptulon is going to be the same thing. It's not going to be as good as Caverns, but it's going to be really close. And it's going to have initiative too, so it's even a little more frustrating than Caverns. And yet even that, right? Like, the reason that people hate Caverns, but they like really, 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 really hate cards like Flappy Bird or like Gangplank or like whatever. Also, what was that? Watchtower, right? Watchtower was also an S tier card. It was a neutral and it was a common, but it was also an S tier card. And they just felt totally different. And they feel totally different because they're coming out earlier and they're deciding games earlier. Like, if you're wondering why Inkvale Ambusher is not like S tier, like, Watchtower is S tier. Think of the difference between between an Ambusher and a Watchtower and what you had to do to not lose the game when those came out. That's the difference between an early game A tier card and an early game S tier card. Alright. So it's good that Inkvale Ambusher is preemptively banned. Command of the Neptulon. I hope I said this when they did the adjustments, right? Where Shaman was not a problematic class, and so they didn't make any adjustments down. That was a mistake. They should have adjusted Caverns down. Because it's just a ridiculously stupid card, and no one has fun playing it or against it, and it's never fair. Like, yeah, I get it, you don't need to do it for class balance reasons, but you need to do it for the same reason why you adjust down Mothership, why you adjust down Gangplank. It is not good for the game of Arena. I don't care if the class is doing fine, right? And you don't need to hurt it. Like, raise the offering rate of some, like, worse cards, but, like, not Caverns level cards, right? Like, to compensate. Same with Command of the Neptulon. It's going to hit the Arena. I don't know how many people are going to super complain about it, but I bet it'll be a decent amount because it's going to be a ridiculous card. But it won't get the amount of hate that something like Inkvale Ambusher is going to get. It won't get the amount of hate a neutral card is going to get. They still should nerf it, even if Shaman is not doing too well. They should nerf the offering rates. If not just totally ban it. Like, I don't see when Caverns will be like a okay play if I just can't win if they play it on 4. Like, I don't know, that card just, to me, right, it's an S tier card. It just doesn't seem like it should be in the Arena at all. But if you're going to have it be in the Arena, at least make it the equivalent of a legendary class card, right? Where they put it out and it's like, who cares if it's a Colossal? You're not going to see it that often, like, hard in someone's deck. Okay. Let's talk about the other rogue card that is an A tier card. So, the other rogue card that is an A tier card is Jackpot. It's a very different style of card than Inkvale Ambusher. Jackpot is 2 mana, it's a spell, and it says add 2 random spells from other classes that cost 5 mana or more to your hand. A lot of RNG in this one. Not a lot your opponent can do about this, unlike Inkvale Ambusher. But oftentimes it won't do that much, but also oftentimes it'll do a lot.
Spells have gotten really good in recent years. That's really what it comes down to.
And they're high cost spells too, so the RNG is also super bad. Because when you like whiff on a high cost spell, it's unplayable. Like, you're literally talking about stuff like Ice Tower or whatever that, like, 10 mana mage spell is or stuff. Like, there's not that many super bad ones, but there's more than a few. They exist. And if you get one of them, it's just an unplayable card. But the other card that you get, if you hit with it, and you're likely going to hit because there's so many good high costing spells as well, it's going to be one of those insane cards that's going to be worth the price of 2 cards at least.
Yeah. So look, you do get 2 shots. You get 2 shots with it, and that I think is one of those redeeming factors. It is kind of hard to like completely whiff on this. I haven't done the exact math on it, but it is kind of tough to like completely whiff on it. And those big spells, like yeah, even if you're paying 2 more mana for them, the fact that you're getting one is so good. Like you pay 2 more mana for a rune, you pay 2 more mana for I don't know, like a whirlpool, for example. A lot of
Raid of
times you're very
Onyxia.
happy.
Sorry, Scale of Onyxia.
You're very sometimes you're just very happy to pay that. I would say most of the time you're very happy to pay that.
Yeah. Like, those are all the ridiculous stuff that you can add 2 mana to it, and you're like, cool, right? And your other spell may not be totally worthless. Like, let's say you get like a sprint. It's not worthless. You're just not going to play it for a while. So yeah, Jackpot. Another really good card that is coming to Rogue. And super RNG. Like, it's also common, in case we didn't mention this. So that's going to be in a lot of Rogue decks. And also, I don't know how they do this anymore, but back in the day, if a card is banned in a set, the other cards within the set actually take over its offering rates rather than it being spread evenly across all the cards available in the meta. So if that's the case, and Inkville Ambusher is already preemptively banned, Jackpot will be offered even more. It's just, I mean, this is not healthy for the meta either, but not anywhere near as bad as Inkville Ambusher in terms of feel bad.
Yep.
All right. Those are actually the only S and A tier cards on the class level. We're now moving on to the B tier cards, which are good cards, better than the average card in your deck, but nothing like too special. This is like where your Ram Commanders are. Ram Commander's probably like a B plus. So let's move over to Priest for the next cards. Oh, great. Here is where I do not actually have the cards in front of me. Let me see if I can get them in, because these were just released. These were just released earlier this afternoon. And they're like, I saw them in the video that they tweeted out, and they haven't been like put down into like words. I don't know if it's Hearthstone losing popularity or like when the Hearthstone's actual page took over doing the actual set releases, the official site, that the normal sites that track this stuff no longer do it. And so it used to be that these things come up and they're immediately available. Now, not so much. They're on the Play Hearthstone website. Are they really? I couldn't find them on the Play Hearthstone website if they are. I couldn't find the set at all. No cards of this set.
Are you trying to? I thought we weren't showing them. We're just going to talk.
Yeah, but I can't even find them. Like, I can't even find a description of these cards.
Oh no! I just search them up, like on Google.
Oh, like type the name in each one.
Yeah.
Okay, I was trying to find the
like.
list.
Oh, I don't understand. I'm like, you know the name. Like, if you know the name, you could just do that.
Oh, they're under the Sunken City set. I see. Okay. Well, anyway, I'm just search them each of these up individually. So the first card is, you want to do the first card? Since you already have
what? This is the B plus card.
B plus card. This is the only B plus card.
Sure. It's a priest card. Let's talk about Drown. Drown is a rare shadow spell. Shadow tag is kind of important sometimes. It's a 4-mana shadow spell. Put an enemy minion on the bottom of your deck. So, good removal card. Once again, it's like an assassinate, but better because you don't trigger the death rattle, right? There's plenty of death rattles right now. And whatever the minion is, if it was good enough for you to kind of get rid of, it is potentially good enough for you to dredge back up for yourself. Potentially. It could just be something that you really wanted to get rid of, but you don't really want in your hand, and that's fine, right? But putting it on the bottom of your deck doesn't really make that big of a difference in terms of a negative effect for you. But there is a lot of times a pretty um, big upside if it is like game winning minion, and then you're able to dredge it back up for yourself. So just a really solid removal here.
Yep. 4 mana assassinate would be B. This one's B plus. Pretty easy to rate. Priest hard removal. On the other hand, the whole problem with priest hard removals is that priest shouldn't be able to hard remove. Remember that whole thing? Remember how Shadow Word Death works? Shadow Word Pain, Shadow Word Death. The whole thing is that priest needs to have trouble removing certain things. No, we're killing that flavor. This is the Entomb situation again, except this one's 2 mana less to show the power creep that's happening, and it puts it in the bottom of your deck, which is probably more useful. Okay, so that is Drown. Next, we're going to talk about the other priest card. This one is the other good priest card. This one is B level, and it is Herald of Light. 3 mana, 3/4 Naga. Battlecry, if you cast a holy spell while holding this, restore 6 health to all friendly characters. 6 face damage is not nothing these days. It's actually quite a lot, especially if you're playing a class like Priest, and being able to heal up the stuff on your board. That is also a nice little bonus. It synergizes with bunches of stuff depending on what's in the meta. And it's otherwise a totally solid 3-drop on curve. So it's actually a very good ability. You just have to cast a holy spell first.
Yep. I don't got much to add.
All right. Let's move on to Druid. Druid has a couple of B tier cards as well. Remember, these are just cards that are somewhat better than the average card in your deck. They're nothing super special, but we thought we'd go over them. First one is Herald of Nature, another Herald. It is a 3 mana 3/3 Naga. Battlecry, if you've created a nature spell while holding this, if you cast a nature spell while holding this, give your other minions +1/+2. So, giving all your minions +1/+2 is really, 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 really good. Really, really, really good. A 3 mana 3/3 is not. This is not one that you're going to want to play on turn 3 unless you absolutely have to and you have no nature spells in your hand and you don't have a lot of your deck either. Otherwise, you're waiting for it and it becomes more of a spell than a minion first.
Yep. It's just conditional, but you're definitely gonna lose to this card a decent. Well, assuming druids are even somewhat okay in the meta, you're gonna lose to this card sometimes, and you're gonna really hate this card. So yeah, it's gonna be a rough one.
Okay, and the other druid card worth mentioning is Spirit of the Tides, 2 mana 2/2 elemental, rare. It says if you have any unspent mana at the end of your turn, gain +1/+2. So you're not really going to play it on turn 2, unless you have nothing else to do. You're going to play it on turn 3, and then not spend the mana. And then it becomes a 3 mana 3/4 immediately, which puts it on curve. And then for every turn afterwards that you hang a mana, or even if you purposefully hang a mana, you get 3 more stats on this guy, which is really nice. And part of the stats is 2 health, so it survives more often the more often you kind of like feed it. But you can only feed it once per turn, and the stats don't come immediately; they come at the end of the turn. It's an interesting card. Like when I first saw it, I'm like, "Ooh, this seems potentially overpowered." But then you play it out a bit, and it's like, "Yeah, it's not really overpowered. It's just kind of what the power level is these days."
Oh wait, so you do understand that it's like if you hang like 4 mana, you're not getting like
Yeah.
4.
Yeah, okay, you can only get this once per turn.
Yeah, you can only get it. Yeah, you can only get it once. Yeah, just wanted to make sure.
Yep.
Because the way you were phrasing it made it seem like that might have been possible. But yeah, it's just flexible. Like it's just a really flexible thing, and it helps you. Because sometimes I don't know, like sometimes maybe you just do really want to play it. But then other times you're just like, no, I want to play 3 mana 3/4. It's not gonna be a great card. It's not gonna be a card that wins you the game. It's just one of these like druid cards that's pretty flexible. That's like okay, it's fine. Yeah, like this is a card that I see it. I'm like, okay, a low B is fine with it.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean it's a B. It's a 3 mana 3/4 with upside that you don't have to worry about. Like, how often does your 3 mana 3/4 survive a turn? Very often, most of the time. Your 3 mana 3/4 probably survives, more than 70% of the time. And then on the next turn, if you hang a mana, or if you choose to hang a mana, even if you don't have to, you get another 3 stats. Trading 1 mana for 3 stats at that point in the game is very good. So it's got a lot of subtle kind of upside, right?
Yeah, yeah, true.
All right, those are the druid ones, and then there's a final card that we're rating a B, and this one goes down to warrior. It is Title Revenant. Remember, B is just above the average card in your deck. Nothing super special. This one is a 8 mana 5/8, but it has a battle cry that says deal 5 damage, gain 8 armor. So that's a lot of armor. Good for those armor synergies. Dealing 5 damage can go face. This is potential reach here, but after that, your 5/8 body is a little lackluster for like a premium 8-drop.
Still quite good. Like we're just power creeping on everything these days, right? Power creeping Croc, significantly so. We're power creeping a lot of things, and that's kind of fine because if you pick Croc, well, first of all, this is a class card, so it should be better than whatever neutral variant is out there. But even if you reintroduce pick Croc, you're just like, that's fine. It's okay. It's not like I'm not like unhappy to get pick Croc, but I'm not super happy about it. So yeah, Tidal Revenant is fine, and let's face it, Warriors tend to need some help when it comes to good cards. So I think this should be fine.
Yeah. Okay, that was the last card that I had on my list that was, B or above. Anything else you wanted to talk about for from the new card sets, or?
I think there's one card that's interesting. And I thought about it a little. You even had an asterisk next to this one. I'm
Oh,
guessing.
that means it's a legendary.
Yeah. So
that's all the asterisk means.
I think this really this had a lot of discussion on the GOAT Discord, which I know you check very often, so I'm sure you saw this discussion. It's Commander Olthok. Commander Olthok is the Warlock legendary. And it is a 5 mana. What was it? Yep. 5 mana 7/7 battle cry. Your opponent's cards cost health instead of mana next turn. And the reason I thought this was interesting, it was the reactions kind of varied from person to person. And it's very easy to point out its potential downsides for the user, and also upsides for the user, and then downsides for the opponent and upsides for the opponent. So you scored it a C+, right? How did you reach there?
Okay, so the first thing that happens is however mana your opponent has next turn doesn't matter anymore. So they immediately lose all that mana, right?
Yeah.
So if they're playing it on turn, let's say, it's a 5 mana card. Let's say they play it on turn 7, so your opponent's turn 8 next. Your opponent loses 8 mana next turn, flat out. Then after that, they get this generally favorable conversion of life into tempo. You generally want to take it, but the more you sacrifice in life, the more each point of life is worth. So you can't, you can think of the situation where, well, the next turn my opponent empty my hand, like I just played the old school Millhouse Mana House, and then I lose, right? Because my opponent just emptied their hand, and who cares if they only have 5 health left, right? Like, if I don't have 5 health of reach, they have the whole board, I have nothing on the board, they've hard removed my 7/7 anyway, so it didn't matter, blah, blah, blah. But they may not have that. They may not have those combinations of cards, and they may not be able to play out all of those. And you still already got the benefit of a 5 mana 7/7, and you have taken away 8 of their mana to begin with. So they need to play 8 mana's worth of stuff, and by taking 8 health of damage, just to like have this not be a actual downside on them, and then they have to climb back out of it. So if you can get a good amount of damage on your opponent, not even a large amount, but just like a good amount, then this card becomes like, I mean, I wouldn't say your opponent using health instead of mana is an upside unless you get them down to real low, but it stops being that much of a downside, and you always get the upside of a 5 mana 7/7. So I think it's one of those things where if you play it on curve, which is when the 5 mana 7/7 is most useful, your opponent gets the most advantage because you'll probably have hit them for less, and they lose less mana. They only lose 5 or 6 mana the next turn. But if you play it later on, when you hit them for more damage, and the 5 mana 7/7 matters less, the actual ability may be what's gating them. It's an interesting card, but that's why it comes out to be a C+. I mapped it all out, stuck them all in, and this is what the result comes out to be. C+ is it's a tiny bit. It's basically the average card of your deck. It's a little bit below the average card of your deck, but this one swings wildly, right? Depending on what the hell's happening.
So this is one. Look, I don't really care so much about whatever we rate it. But I thought about this, and because there was so much discussion on the Discord, I thought it was interesting. So I thought about it more myself because during the time in which people were discussing, I was like, I honestly don't know how to think about this. But I think this is just one of those cards that's actually good. And I think it's just gonna be actually good, and because look, you can focus on the bad side, and there is a bad side. And then you can focus on the good side, and it's just about weighing what is more likely and what is more relevant. Because even if it has the same likelihood, the relevancy of it in each of those scenarios is important. So the way I view it is this. The most important thing to think about is not just the extra cards that your opponent can play, but let's start with what it 100% does, because your opponent plays extra cards, quote unquote, extra cards, sometimes, depending on them. What always happens is you eliminate the mana that they were going to have. That is always gone. They were supposed to have 5 mana, that's always gone. They were supposed to have 10 mana, that's always gone. And then you instead replace it with this additional ability. Now, once again, anything that they kind of cast up to what they were supposed to be able to cast, and by cast I also mean like summon or whatever, right? What they were able to play. So, like you playing this on, for example, 10 mana, you take away, or what they are able to gain back starts later than if you were to play this on like 5 mana, for example. I just think, thinking through all of the possibilities, this kind of has to be a pretty good card for a few reasons. Like, okay, if you are losing and your opponent is way ahead, your opponent doesn't really have to do anything. But once again, like, there are very few cards in the meta in which if you're like losing, that this is going to save you. So I don't really consider this like that bad. If you are ahead, even slightly, I would say, even if you're just ahead slightly, if you play this, you lock out the game more often than you would have if you didn't play this and then they did crazy things. So I think it'll feel bad when you play this and you're slightly ahead and you were like 65-70% chance to win. I think you raise it significantly by playing it in those instances. And then if your opponent does something crazy in one turn that they would not have been able to do with just 10 mana, you feel bad. But I think on average that's probably an extraordinarily powerful play. And then if the game is kind of close, what are you giving up, right? It's like, okay, so let's say then they play 15 mana worth of cards. Unless they were, the game was close and they were at 30 health, in which case you were a little bit further than you might have thought you were. if they were at like, 22 health and then they spent 15 mana, suddenly it's like even if they made it closer by doing that, they might have played into some of your hard removal, like all of this stuff. So the just thinking of all the scenarios, I'm like, wait, I think this is actually good. Because I know some people in the Discord were like, no, this is trash. Some people were saying it's like, I think it's okay. I think it's situational. The more I think about this card, I'm like, damn, I think it's like good.
I think what you're not talking about is, I mean, you brushed it over real quick in the beginning, which is what happens when you're behind, which is going to happen like, I don't know, a third of the time, a quarter of the time at latest. When you're behind, this card is unplayable. And when you have unplayable cards in your hand, you limit your ability to be a good player. So being a literal unplayable card in a quarter to a third of situations that you'll find yourself in, that hurts the card. Like more so than if it was like a pit fighter, right?
The problem is, no, I mean, if you're behind and you just play a pit fighter, I think that's about as bad. I understand. It's not always as bad, but like it's about as bad, right?
No, so I mean, I think you buy yourself a little bit of a turn.
I think the situation where it's not as bad, because I think as soon as you are a little bit more than a little behind, it doesn't matter. Pit fighter versus this, it's the same thing, right? Like the pit fighter doesn't help you.
I think that you're exaggerating that. I think the pit fighter on 5 would really help compared to this, even if you're like, I don't know, down to 20 health and your opponent has like a Yeti on the board and you don't.
Well, I don't consider that more than just a little bit behind. I would say that is like a little behind,
Okay.
I think that...
I mean, if going into your turn 5, your opponent has a full turn 4 minion, and you don't...
In this meta, that's just a little bit behind.
That's just a little bit behind? Okay.
Come on, that's just in this meta.
Well, okay, well then I think if you're a little bit behind, this card is unplayable. Because once you play this card, your opponent has a very high chance of immediately eliminating almost all of your cards and or taunting up to be able to, blunt whatever attack it is. Going down to still be around 10 health, if not above 10 health. And then just basically killing you the next turn. So you absolutely need to have a board clear. Like, you absolutely need to have a board clear that you have enough mana to play the next turn in order to do something like this. And that's just not really going to happen that often, and that you have that board clear or you have that much mana. So, like, I think it's a big downside to this card.
I think it's a downside, but here's the way I think about it is, in this meta, you really do need cards that lock up a win. And I saw like somebody compared it to Lotheb. I think Lotheb is a very fair comparison. And in this meta, especially, I think you need cards that lock up a win, increase your chances of winning, and really increase your chances of winning while you are ahead either by like a decent amount or even just a small amount, and then adding on that extra percentage, like a significant extra percentage chance to win. I think those cards are just really valuable, because I think in this meta, you having cards that help you come back, there's actually quite a few of those. Cards that not ensure, but like help you lock up a victory. Those are actually a little bit harder to find. So that's where I see, just from my experience in this meta, because let's face it, the cards that you're kind of talking about, it's like the board clears, right? Like getting back, swinging it into your favor, stuff like scales, right? Like we talked about scales a lot. Those are like flipper friends. Like those are actually more common than something like this. Yeah. So I'm like,
but that works totally against this card. The value is
there and the need is there.
But that works totally against this card because those cards are so common in this meta. There's a high chance your opponent has those cards, and if your opponent has those cards, even if you're a little bit ahead, they win the game if you play this card. Whereas you were ahead, a little bit ahead before you played this card. Because they're going to scales, they're going to flipper, you're going to have no board, they're going to have a bunch of stuff on the board, and then they're still going to have 10 health, and you're not going to be able to kill off that 10 health. And they've just locked up the board. And so you, once again, need that board clear, need that whatever. And this card just didn't help, right? Like, you would have just rather to be a pit fighter. Now, of course, you wouldn't know that they had a scales in their hand or like whatever, right? But you're just running a very large risk in this meta because, like you said, there are so many of those cards. So many.
I mean, So yeah, if we're talking about like, because you're talking about the turn 5 thing, right?
Not necessarily turn 5. I mean, like, kind of like almost any turn in which your opponent still has cards, so it depends on how good their card draw capability is. Like, if they have shit card draw capability, then by, like, turn 9 or 10, you don't really care, because they just don't have that many cards to play.
If we're talking about turn 10, then it way sways it. Because if we're talking about turn 5, I'm going to agree with most of the scenarios that you pitch here on turn 5. I think playing on turn 5 is, like, bad, like real bad, because it's the not just like, oh, what would they have been able to spend mana on. It's like they can't play an 8 mana card and now they can. Right, that like binary yes or no. Right, like them being able to ramp and then have the additional option to play other stuff. That's extraordinarily powerful. I think most of the time, a high percentage of time, playing it on turn 10 and then them getting 15 mana or 15 life worth of stuff out, that's just really powerful. And if like 15 life just really didn't matter to them, I think that was going to be a tough game for you anyways.
Yeah, but now you're talking about a card that you don't want to play until turn 10, right? You're talking about Raid of Onyxia card, like Ysera scales. Sorry, no, I meant the other one. I meant.
You meant Raid Boss.
Yeah, I meant Raid Boss Onyxia.
Okay, see, this is why I need you to like. This is something that matters.
Yeah. So like, if you wait to turn 10, you really need the card to be super, super, super powerful. Even if it only costs 5 mana, and you could do something else on the turn. And this one, like, kind of hits there, right? Like, that's why. I mean, it's an interesting card to talk about, but that's why ultimately the score it got is like somewhere around the average card in your deck. Like, it hurts when it hurts, it helps when it helps. It's definitely not a trash card. It's also not a premium card. Like, it's a well-designed card for the arena, in the sense of, like, power level, I think.
My take on this card, after thinking about it a lot, I don't think it is a premium card, but I don't really care so much to fight about this.
Like, you rated like a B or a B plus?
B plus.
Okay.
I think I'd put it at a B plus. I think it is solid. And the only thing that I am, like I have put into consideration all those things, right? And I agree. You throw any scenario out there in which is like, what if this is happening on 5 mana? What if this is happening on 6 mana? Right? What if this is happening on 7 mana?
So you're basically trying to turn this into a Warlock 10 mana card, or like a Warlock turn 10 plus card. Those cards have to be super good to be good.
And I think the effect is actually that good. But I just have to penalize it, right? For being exactly what it is. But yeah, I do think it's that good. Like, you hear me talk about this effect and it's really good. But no, I mean, like, I get it. And that's why I think appropriately.
Yeah, like your ideal scenario outside, because first of all, you're Warlock, you're probably not hitting your opponent's face that much. You're probably protecting your face. They probably have a lot of health, but still, even if they have like 25 health or something that's like really high for the late game, they still can't spend more than 15 mana without being scared, right? Like, if they spend 15 mana from 25 health, they better be like clearing your board and putting a taunt out, or like something. And you want to get to that situation where they have like 3 cards left in their hand, right? And then you have a little bit of the board, and you're like, well, now I drop this. Now they're going to put themselves into a real hole. They have 3 cards. They have 2 cards in their hand, and they're about to draw another one. So altogether, that may not be that much mana to begin with, and they can't play that much mana. And where you're the one putting like a little bit of pressure on there, and it makes it really hard. And you've eaten up 10 of their mana. Like, that's the big thing. So you get to that scenario, which is not an uncommon scenario. Like you said, right? That's not an uncommon scenario for a good player to find themselves in. Like, turn 10 or above, they have a few cards left, not a ton, but you're kind of afraid of those cards, and those cards could swing the game into your favor, and you need to like kind of close the game out. I think it's a little anti-Warlock. Like, I think Warlocks find themselves less in that kind of scenario. Like, if I'm in that kind of scenario as Warlock, I feel really good already with just my hero power,
I think in this meta you feel less good.
Yes.
And this is why I look at this card and I'm like, shit, this is something that especially good players, I think, would really like / need, right? Is that scenario? Yeah, that scenario. You're going into turn 9, going into turn 10, you think that you have like a 75%
Mm-hmm.
chance of winning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty good. You play this, you bump that up to like
Yeah.
a good 95 plus. Um,
Mm,
there are very few cards that are able to do that. And I value that very highly. But yes, you can ask me like so many scenarios on turn 5 and turn 6. You're rarely going to find a yes from me there. Like, yeah, I completely agree. This is going to be very unplayable during those turns.
all right. So that's Commander Ulthok, the Warlock Legendary that's going to come in. It's going to be an interesting card, and this is one of those cards where the win rate of this card is going to mean literally nothing on HS replay because everyone is going to misplay this card. So yeah, that's one more card. Anything else you want to talk about in that's coming in that's like interesting?
Nope, that is it. That is
Okay.
it.
I think we went over the interesting cards and cards you really want to like be watching out for in your drafts to target. Remember, no Demon Hunter yet, no Hunter yet, no Mage yet. Those cards are coming tomorrow, which is Monday. And we've also changed our upload to YouTube schedule so that the Arena Coop and Lightforge podcast get uploaded now early in the day on Tuesday rather than Monday because Monday was like a little inconsistent to be able to like get everything out, and we'd rather just have that consistency. So if you want to get everything as soon as it comes out, we're always uploading the podcast like either the night of or the morning after. And you can always be on Twitch and watch the old VODs for the podcast or for the Arena Coop. But the YouTube ones are now officially like the target time, and the time that we're going to hit from now on is going to be Tuesday morning-ish East Coast time. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited about the Throne. I wrote Throne of Tides. Is that really what it's called? The Throne of Tides? Did I just miss this? That's a dumb name. Throne of
Yeah.
the Tides. Okay, that's a little better than Throne of Tides, but that's still not a great name. All right, whatever. We're gonna go with it. So yeah, so it's gonna be a set that comes in. It's gonna be a lot of like these mini set power levels. I remember like the last one was Onyxia's Lair, right? And the cards that came out of that was obviously Raid Boss Onyxia, that was totally stupidly like amazing, but also Scales of Onyxia, Raid Negotiator, which is better than what we had originally rated. Like we rated it A, it's better than that depending on the pool. Boomkin was in that one. Don't Stand in the Fire, a Spawn of Deathwing, a S tier card, and there's not that many cards that come in, and a high percentage of them are like super good. This time, we don't really see that much of it. The Ambusher, which was an A tier card and good, is already not in the meta, right? Jackpot is super RNG, and we're just gonna have to live with that. I don't think they're gonna do anything with it. Command of the Neptulon, hopefully will have their offering odds reduced, but that is something to watch out for. And we don't see Demon Hunter, Hunter, and Mage yet, so maybe they have good stuff. But overall, this for a mini set, this is kind of an in check power level for the arena.
Yep. I think you just have to expect some pretty overpowered stuff in this day and age. And for what they did, it was expected, I would say. If you expected less power than this, you probably shouldn't have.
Yep, this is where things are going. Yeah, I mean, they didn't push power levels, which was nice. Question from the GOAT to end this podcast. Question from the GOAT is brought to you by our patrons at patreon.com/grinninggoat. Thank you so much for your support. And if you listen and you're not like a Twitch sub, this is a good way. This is the only way to support us financially. We're so just consider it if you haven't. Just chipping in a little. Every little bit helps. We have a goal, and last year we I guess we met the goal, but we did some tax stuff to amortize instead of paying it all off at once. But anyway, our goal is basically to break even this year and next year, and to earn enough money so that we can actually write off fully the computers that we bought last year. That's it. We're not planning to earn any more money than that, and we really need a little bit of a boost compared to last year to get us there. So we may do some actual actual fundraising streams and stuff later on, which we haven't done since the pandemic started. I think once the pandemic started, we're like, we probably don't need more money than other people. But pandemic is ending, and we have tax needs. Literally just trying to make $0 in the year, but buy equipment and stuff for the stream. So thank you guys so much. Our patrons who help a lot, our Twitch subs who also help a lot. Top patrons for May and June: RV Night Train, huge shout out. Eric L, Yin, REG, Dan F, and Karova, as well as to brand new M4P. Thank you guys so much for supporting us. And once again, it is patreon.com/grinninggoat. Question from the goat tonight, I guess, is what are your plans with regard to the huge release that nobody's talking about happening this week of Diablo Immortal releasing on Thursday?
I'm gonna maybe try it out. Maybe you are all over this. I really don't care that as much about this.
I'm trying to get everyone to at least like try it, like in good faith, and like pay $5 for the first battle pass, and just like give it a go, because this game, like, yeah, it's a mobile game. Yeah, it was launched and it was very memey when it was announced because people wanted Diablo 4. And yeah, it's not Diablo 4. And I probably would like Diablo 4 better than this game. But you know what?
Pretty similar to Diablo 3.
It looks very similar to Diablo 3.
New Diablo 3.
Yes.
Not the Diablo 3 that you played. New Diablo 3. I played a lot of, quote, new Diablo 3.
So it incorporates almost everything that Diablo 3 like innovated on and eventually brought into via updates. It incorporates almost all of that.
Along with like, I think a more complex like endgame crafting or like upgrade system. It's like
everything that is not the actual battle and like gameplay itself should be more complicated than Diablo 3. Because they are building on top of Diablo 3. But the actual gameplay is going to be simpler because it's meant for mobile, so you can't be too complicated.
Right. So that's my problem with it. I play Diablo 3. I played a lot of Diablo 3, and I'm sort of over Diablo 3 now. So when I see this, I'm like, this is just Diablo 3 with some more bells and whistles, and I'm okay with that. I'll try it out. But I don't see myself diving in that much right now.
So for those of you who are maybe on the fence about it, or like have forgotten that this thing is happening, this thing is launching with more single-player content than all of Diablo 3. This is a AAA Blizzard release, just right off the bat. Even if you have, no interest in whatever the other stuff, this is just a AAA Blizzard game. It is available on the PC. It's also available on your phone, even though it takes a ridiculous amount of hard drive. It's like 16 gigs on your phone. Like when I heard that, I was like, geez, okay. Like I have it, but like a lot of people probably won't. So that's number one. Like if you just want to play a nice single player game or like a co-op game and like not really interact with the wider, community or public and just treat it like hey, what's Blizzard doing now with Diablo? This game is as big as Diablo 3, bigger than Diablo 3 at launch. And they're going to keep updating it every month or so because it's a persistent online world. So this is going to be huge for the Diablo franchise, for the story, for the just, you want to play a new Diablo game, right? I love D2R, and especially because D2R updated the trees. I said I would come back when D2R updated the trees. I came back. I played Hardcore Ladder. I got to level 93. I died a couple days ago. I was playing when I was tired, and also I popped immediately. I don't know. Even if I was at my sharpest, I think it would have been very tough for me to be able to hit a pot in time. It was literally like in maybe like 10, 15 milliseconds that I like went from full to zero as a barb with the best BO in any public game that I see.
That's a shame.
Yeah,
it happens.
I mean, I was gonna quit anyway tomorrow, so it's just a loss of a lot of forum gold and the ability to play this character later on when when the ladder ends.
If you come back, you would need another rush.
Yeah,
and then you would
I'm not gonna come back in this ladder season. I'm gonna come back next ladder season if I play D2R again.
Okay,
and hopefully they'll have more tweaks to the skill trees and whatever, more rune words or just something to shake it up, right? They're leaving themselves plenty of time. But yeah, So that's one for Diablo Immortal. My second pitch for Diablo Immortal, and this is something that I think also gets really overlooked, is that this is the first MMO that Blizzard has created after WoW. And WoW was like the best MMO ever created for its time.
Yeah, but this isn't an MMO.
This is an MMO. This is marketed as an MMO. If you read any descriptions of it from Blizzard, it's an MMO because they are trying to differentiate it from Diablo 4 and Diablo 3 and Diablo 2 Resurrected. Those are not MMOs. This is an MMO.
Okay, look, you can try to call... Like, I can try to call Iggy like a majestic lion, but if people look at it, they know she's not a majestic lion.
But it is an MMO, okay? It has the PvP world v world of an MMO. It has the raids of an MMO. It just limits anything you can do in an MMO setting to 8 people. That's the only limit.
Well, that's a huge limit.
But there's MMO is not just about getting 100 people together all at once, okay? MMOs is about a community.
Let me ask you a question. Do you consider 8 to be massive?
Well, 8 at a time. There's obviously more than 8 in the world.
Yeah, do you consider 8 at a time to be massive?
Like, your guild is going to be hundreds. The time that you can play is going to be 8 at a time, and you're going to be separated out into different battles, but all of those are interconnected. That is the massive part of the world. It's built with MMOs in mind. The creative team behind it, the game designers behind it, the vast majority of them come from the MMO space rather than strictly the Diablo space or some of the other spaces. So this is going to have the best of Diablo 3 and the best of WoW, while simplifying everything down to fit on a mobile platform. Because, let's face it, WoW's a little bloated. Let's face it, Diablo 3 is a little bloated. The itemization is actually simpler than in Diablo 3. It's deeper, but it's less like wide, right? So it's more complicated in the parts that are interesting and less so in the parts that are generally less interesting. Okay, so that's my other pitch, is if you like general MMO play, which I don't know if I do because I haven't played an MMO ever. Like, I don't think I've ever played an actual MMO. So we'll see how much I like the MMO aspect of it. But even if I don't, I'll be playing with my wife and Merps and other people who want to join our channel. There's item sharing that's available for your warband, which is just people you play with often, not necessarily your guild or whatever. It's all like they set up a lot of systems that clearly make it like they know what they're doing in this space. I mean, this is the WoW team, right? This is the people who used to work on WoW and have spent the last 5 years creating Diablo Immortal to be an MMO experience for mobile. So they know what they're doing, and it's going to be good to kick it off. The third point that I'm going to make in favor of Diablo Immortal is that it is pretty cheap. You may have heard all the complaints about monetization. There's like some people are boycotting it, some people are just like making noise online about it. One, if you actually dig into how the monetization works, it is like, yeah, if you want to do top level PvP, you probably have to spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. That is true in every single mobile game. Diablo is not an exception. If you want to do top level PvP, that's it. If you do not want to do top level PvP, which I imagine 95% plus of you listening here have no real interest in, then Diablo's a really freaking cheap game. You can do the highest level raids, you can do whatever, and it will cost you, the base is $5 a month for the battle pass. You get like these 80% off ridiculous discounts that if you want to actually pay for the game, those are the packages that you should buy every time you complete a certain quest or whatever. And so those probably add up, and you'll be paying like, I don't know, $40, maybe $60, like the normal amount of a AAA game these days, right? Over the course of however long you play this game. So, and if you don't like it, it's just $5 or $0. I mean, it's free to play, but I would recommend paying a little because the first amounts in these games are, it's like Mercenaries, right? Like the first little bit of money you put in is always hugely worth it. And then if you want to like buy your way to victory, it's like, I mean, do you have $100,000? If so, you may become 1% more powerful, like for PvE. Why do that? Just you hit a soft cap, and the soft cap is pretty cheap. And the other part of it is that after all of these complaints, even the PvP part, they made the not pay for win, the non-legendary crest. They made the rare crest, which you can much more easily access as a non-paid option. They made that over 1,000 times better for endgame gear than beta. Because that's what people were complaining about, that you can't get to PvP endgame gear in any reasonable fashion as a free-to-play player versus, actually spending money on the game. So, even if PvP is your ultimate endgame, from whatever you've been reading, it is now over 1,000 times more accessible. I mean, I think it started at like millions of dollars or something. So 100, like 1,000 times more accessible is not like you're still gonna have to drop money on it, but it's not as ridiculous as it was before.
Please tell me how much you got paid by Blizzard to say this.
I got paid nothing by Blizzard. I have no contact. I wasn't even invited to the beta. I'm just excited about the next Diablo game. I thought as a Diablo fan, a bigger Diablo fan than me, would be more excited. But I understand this is not part of the main Diablo franchise. This is an MMO, not an ARPG. These are very important differences for Diablo Immortal compared to the other Diablo games. But it looks like it's gonna be good, and they're gonna support it. And this is a team that you should trust off the beginning until they prove themselves otherwise, rather than the other way around. Because it's an established team. It's an established team with a lot of credits to their name, and they have adjusted. They've delayed this game, by the way, by more than a year, by like almost 2 years, just to tweak things further. They've chosen not to make money, just to tweak things further to make sure that they're hitting it as wide of a market as possible and making their product as good as possible. Game companies don't really do that. All right, and Blizzard is doing it because they really value this particular product that they're putting out. The game, if you talk to anybody who was in the alpha and the beta and whatever, the game was ready 2 years ago. They played it. They played a lot of parts of it. They liked it. They were like, cool, is this coming out in a few months? What's happening? And Blizzard's like, yeah. Tweaked a bunch of stuff, made it able to crossplay on PC. Those are all important things for Blizzard, and I appreciate all that.
Oh my god. Okay. Well, we're done.
So anyway, if you want to play Diablo Immortal, feel free to, once the game gets going, assuming I'm still playing a couple weeks from now, which I think I will be, but maybe the game sucks so much that I won't be playing. But if I am, you can hit me up. We can get join a goat guild or something. We'll see. This is not going to be a super competitive guild, even if it even happens. It's going to be kind of a chill thing. I will not be part of the top 0.01% fighting for the leaderboards or whatever, or at least that's not my intention. But it'll be fun, and that's my 10-minute spiel about Diablo Immortal.
Okay, great. Let's end this.
All right. Until next week, when we will be here with Throne of Tides arena analysis from On the Ground. This is ADWCTA.
This is Merp. See you guys.